Sabrina was shot and killed by her husband, Volanta Walker, on Saturday night. Douglasville police responded to a 911 call about a domestic incident on Little Brook Way just before 9:30. Investigators say the couple got into an argument when Volanta chased Sabrina outside and shot her. The GBI says when Volanta wouldn't comply with officers' commands to drop the gun and pointed at them, an officer shot him. Medics took him to a nearby hospital for treatment. One of Sabrina's daughters was home at the time.
I literally brought a knife to a gunfight. I couldn't do anything. He could have took me with her. So as much as I wanted to save my mama, I'm happy I'm still here with all my sisters.
The family says the couple had been married for less than a year.
It was Saturday, October 4th, 2025, just after 9:27 p.m. in Douglasville, Georgia, a quiet suburban neighborhood where families were winding down for the night. The sound of cicadas mixed with distant television noise, children laughing somewhere down the block, and the low hum of streetlights cutting through the dusk. But on Little Brook Way, peace was about to shatter forever. Police dispatchers received a call that night, one of those calls that start with panic and end with silence. Moments later, sirens tore through the darkness. Neighbors peeked through blinds as flashing blue lights painted the walls of their living rooms. A woman's body lay motionless in the front yard, and a man stood only feet away, clutching a handgun, refusing to let go. That woman was 56-year-old Sabrina Walker, a mother, a hairstylist, and a dreamer who had spent months preparing for what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the grand opening of her new salon, Groomsmen of Atlanta Barbershop. The ribbon was already cut, the decorations ready, and invitations had been sent out. The next morning, she was supposed to wake up and step into a new chapter, one filled with pride, success, and stability. But she never made it to that morning. For those who knew Sabrina, she was the heartbeat of her community. Her clients called her Miss Bree. She remembered birthdays, comforted the heartbroken, and turned a haircut into therapy. Her 4 daughters looked up to her as strength personified, a woman who had built everything with her own 2 hands. To the outside world, she seemed untouchable. But love has a way of hiding danger in plain sight. The man standing near her that night wasn't a stranger. He was her husband, 51-year-old Volanta Walker, a man who once promised to protect her. But by the end of that night, his name would be etched into every headline as the man who destroyed everything Sabrina had built. How does love curdle into rage? How does a partner become a threat? And how does a dream turn into a funeral overnight? Before we go deeper into the events that took place that October night, take a moment. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, share this story, and help us continue telling the cases that matter most. And to everyone watching, where are you tuning in from tonight? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from our viewers all over the world. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for standing with us. When you join our YouTube membership, you're not just subscribing, you're helping us honor victims, raise awareness, and make sure their stories are never forgotten. Now, back to Sabrina Walker. That night, she had called a friend, her voice steady but tired. She mentioned arguments at home, nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But hours later, everything she had worked for vanished in the sound of a single gunshot. Neighbors would later describe the scene as surreal. She was just getting ready to open her shop, one woman told reporters through tears. Another said, they seemed fine. I never thought something like this could happen right here. Police bodycam footage would later confirm what no one wanted to believe, that it was Volanta, her own husband, who pulled the trigger. Officers shouted for him to drop his weapon. Instead, he raised it. Seconds later, more shots echoed in the night. This wasn't a random crime. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. It was the tragic ending of a love that had soured long before the first shot was fired. And as Douglasville woke up the next morning, expecting to celebrate the grand opening of Sabrina's salon, they found themselves lighting candles outside instead, mourning a woman who should have been cutting ribbons, not becoming another domestic violence statistic. In the chapters ahead, we'll uncover who Sabrina Walker really was, the mother, the entrepreneur, the friend. And how her compassion for others became the one thing that couldn't save her from the man she trusted most. Because sometimes, love doesn't just hurt, it kills. Before the headlines and flashing police lights, there was just Sabrina Walker, a woman who believed in people, in love, and in starting over. She was born and raised in Douglasville, Georgia, where everybody seemed to know her name, and if they didn't, they knew her smile. For years she worked as a hairstylist, saving every dollar she could while raising her 4 daughters. Her salon chair wasn't just a place of business, it was her sanctuary. People came to her not only for a haircut but for peace. One client later said, "Sabrina had this way of making you forget your problems. She'd say, 'Baby, you can't fix everything today, but you can start with your hair.'" Her life was far from easy. She had struggled, through failed relationships, financial hardship, and the exhaustion that comes from being both mother and father. But what made Sabrina remarkable wasn't the absence of struggle, it was her refusal to surrender to it. She dreamed of owning her own barbershop, something that represented independence and control after years of bending to other people's demands. That dream finally began to take shape in September 2025, when she secured the lease for what would soon become groomsman of Atlanta Barbershop. Friends say she would show up before sunrise, painting walls herself, choosing colors, and laughing about how she wanted something classy, something bold. By the time October rolled around, she was exhausted but proud. The grand opening was scheduled for October 5th, just one day after her 57th birthday. Her daughters helped her plan it, decorating the shop with gold balloons and fresh-cut flowers. Sabrina had even posted a short video on Facebook the morning before her death, smiling, standing in front of the freshly painted sign, saying, "Y'all better come through tomorrow. We're doing this big." Behind that smile, though, there were cracks, small ones, the kind that don't show until they split wide open. Her husband, Volanta Walker, had become increasingly possessive in recent months. Some say he was jealous of her success, others say he couldn't stand the idea of losing control. Her close friend Tanya Lewis told local news later, "He used to come by the shop and just sit there, staring. If a man walked in, he'd tense up. You could feel the energy shift." Sabrina brushed it off, telling friends she was just focused on her business. That week, however, the tension grew louder. She had complained about arguments, late-night shouting, and feeling watched. But she never expected violence. To her, love still meant patience. And maybe, deep down, she thought things would settle once the salon opened, once he saw her happy. On the evening of October 4th, 2025, she left the shop around 7:45 p.m. after setting up the final decorations. She called her daughter Jessica on the way home and said, "Tomorrow's our day, baby. I can finally breathe." Jessica would later say those were the last words she ever heard from her mother. By 9 p.m., the neighborhood was quiet. The balloons were still tied, the lights in the barbershop dimmed. But across town, Sabrina's world was minutes away from collapsing. Because when she pulled into that driveway, she wasn't coming home to peace. She was coming home to a man who couldn't stand her joy, and what followed would turn one woman's dream into Georgia's latest tragedy. For years, Volanta Walker was seen as the quiet husband who stood by Sabrina's side. To outsiders, he looked supportive, often helping her carry supplies into the salon or posting photos of her accomplishments online. But those closest to Sabrina say that behind closed doors, something was shifting. He had become withdrawn, unpredictable, and possessive. Friends noticed that his compliments had turned into questions, and his questions had turned into accusations. "Who were you talking to?" he'd ask, or, "Why you always gotta be at that shop?" What started as mild insecurity had turned into obsession. Sabrina's oldest daughter, Jessica, told reporters that her mother tried to keep the peace. She'd laugh off his paranoia, saying he was just a little jealous. But jealousy is never little when it begins to control someone's every move. He'd show up unannounced at her workplace, check her phone, or sit outside in the car for hours, watching. One neighbor later recalled, he'd park there with the engine running, just staring at the door. Everyone noticed. It didn't feel right. Sabrina knew something was wrong, but she still believed love could soften him. Their marriage had been tested before. Volanta had legal trouble, small arrests, moments of anger, but Sabrina always bailed him out, always believed he could change. To her, loyalty meant forgiveness. Even when her friends warned her that love shouldn't cost her peace, she'd smile and say, he just needs time. But love doesn't fix control, it feeds it. The closer she got to her dream opening, the more his world seemed to fall apart. He couldn't understand why the woman who once depended on him was suddenly independent. In the days leading up to October 4th, Volanta was spiraling. He'd called her multiple times a day, sometimes apologizing, sometimes shouting. She'd confided in a friend that he was acting strange, pacing the house, accusing her of keeping secrets. One evening, after another argument, Sabrina reportedly said, "I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I just want peace." But peace was something Volanta couldn't give her. He wanted possession, not partnership. Police reports would later reveal that Volanta had become aggressive the week before the shooting, even threatening to end it all. Sabrina, compassionate to a fault, stayed. She told her daughter, "If I leave, he won't survive." She didn't realize that staying might cost her life. On the night of the murder, Volanta showed up at home earlier than usual. Neighbors recalled hearing voices, muffled at first, then rising. One woman across the street said she heard Sabrina yell, "I can't do this anymore." Moments later, a gunshot echoed through the night. By the time officers arrived, he was standing over her, weapon in hand, frozen between rage and regret. They told him to drop it. Instead, he raised it toward them, almost as if begging for an ending. That moment would mark the collapse of everything Sabrina had worked for. The woman who built her own empire was gone. The man who claimed to love her had destroyed it. It was Saturday night, October 4th, 2025, and the streets of Douglasville were quiet. The fall air carried the faint smell of rain, the kind that lingers after dusk when porch lights reflect off damp pavement. Inside her car, Sabrina Walker sat parked in her driveway for a few minutes longer than usual. Her phone buzzed, a missed call from her daughter, Jessica, followed by a text that read, "Love you, Mom. Don't stay up too late." Sabrina smiled, typing back, "Love you more. Big day tomorrow." That text would never be read. At 9:22 p.m., neighbors heard voices carrying through the night. One described it later as heated, but not unusual. The Walkers argued often, their tone had become a part of the neighborhood's background noise. But this time, it felt different. The shouting escalated, doors slammed, then silence. For a few seconds, there was nothing but the hum of the streetlights. Then came a single, piercing sound, one gunshot. Inside the house, investigators would later piece together the final moments. Sabrina had entered the home to find Volanta waiting for her in the living room. He accused her of making a fool of him, of choosing her career over her marriage. She told him calmly that she was done arguing, that she just wanted to rest. That simple request lit the fuse. He followed her down the hallway, his voice rising, his anger untethered. At some point, she turned and said, "You're not going to."
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation says Sabrina was shot and killed by her husband, Volanta Walker, outside a home on Little Brook Way Saturday night. When police arrived, they say Walker had a gun. Police say Walker was shot by an officer after pointing the gun at them. He was taken to the hospital. One of Sabrina's daughters, Anisha Nixit, was at the home when it happened.
I couldn't do anything. He could have took me with her. So as much as I wanted to save my mama, I'm happy I'm still here with all my sisters.
"Ruin this for me, not this time." Witnesses later told police they heard her scream those words before the gun fired. By 9:27 p.m., a neighbor had called 911. The dispatcher's log recorded a woman's voice shouting, "He's got a gun. Please hurry." When officers arrived minutes later, their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing Sabrina lying motionless on the front lawn. Volanta stood a few feet away, his gun still in his hand, his shirt soaked in sweat. Officers shouted, "Drop the weapon." 3 times. Instead, he raised it. One of the responding officers, fearing for his life, fired. The bullet struck Volanta in the shoulder. Police bodycams captured the aftermath. Officers rushed to Sabrina, performing CPR as one repeated, "Stay with us, ma'am. Stay with us." But she was gone before the ambulance arrived. The clock read 9:35 p.m., barely 15 minutes since she had pulled into her driveway. The news broke before midnight. Local businesswoman shot and killed by her husband, the headlines read. Friends and clients flooded social media with disbelief. One wrote, "She was just celebrating her shop opening. How does this happen to someone so full of life?" Another comment read, "I was supposed to get my haircut tomorrow. Now I don't even know what to say." Police sealed off the home through the night. Ballistics confirmed the fatal shot came from Volanta's gun, a 9mm he'd purchased 2 years earlier. When questioned at the hospital, he muttered only one line, "She didn't want me anymore." The irony was unbearable. The woman who spent her life making others feel beautiful and strong had her own life taken in a moment of ugliness and weakness. And as dawn broke over Douglasville on October 5, the day Sabrina was supposed to cut the ribbon to her new barbershop, her daughters stood outside instead, holding candles. The balloons meant for celebration floated above them, swaying gently in the morning breeze. A haunting reminder of a dream that never got its beginning. The crime scene on Littlebrook Way was a mosaic of grief and disbelief. Police cars lined the cul-de-sac, red and blue lights pulsing against the quiet houses. Neighbors stood on their lawns, arms folded, whispering to each other as detectives began photographing the scene. What had once been Sabrina Walker's front yard, a space where she once planted flowers and greeted friends, was now marked with yellow tape and evidence flags. The small-town calm of Douglasville had been shattered. Detectives from the Douglasville Police Department and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation arrived just after midnight. They worked methodically, collecting shell casings, documenting footprints, and photographing the blood-stained driveway. Officers noted that Sabrina's purse was still on the front seat of her car, her keys in her hand. It looked like she never even made it inside before the argument turned fatal. One investigator later said, "It was over before she had a chance to run." In the house, the signs of a struggle were evident. A broken lamp near the hallway. A shattered phone screen on the floor. But what stood out most was the silence, a home stripped of warmth, left echoing with the aftermath of violence. Police found the handgun used in the shooting lying near the front steps. Volanta's fingerprints were all over it. When tested, gunshot residue covered both of his hands. At the hospital, where Volanta was being treated for his shoulder wound, detectives began questioning him. He was calm, too calm. When asked what happened, he muttered, "She stopped loving me. She didn't need me anymore." His voice had no tremor, no remorse. Officers recorded the statement, exchanged glances, and wrote in their report, "Suspect displays flat affect and emotional detachment." Sabrina's daughters arrived at the scene hours later, holding one another as officers tried to comfort them. One of them, through tears, asked, "Did she suffer?" The lead investigator paused before replying softly, "It was quick." But nothing about that night would ever feel quick to them, it would replay in slow motion forever. By Monday morning, the GBI confirmed what everyone already knew, this was a domestic homicide. Another woman, another life, gone at the hands of a man who once said he loved her. And yet, even as evidence mounted and news stations broadcast the tragedy, one question lingered over Douglasville: why did Sabrina stay? Morning came too soon for the Walker family. The sun rose over Douglasville, casting its light on a home that no longer held laughter. The yard was still cordoned off with yellow tape, fluttering like ghosts of what had been. Reporters stood nearby, speaking in hushed tones as the story spread across the state: a Georgia mother, entrepreneur, and beloved hairstylist killed the day before her grand opening. The irony cut deeper than any headline could capture. Inside the groomsmen of Atlanta barbershop, the scent of fresh paint and new chairs filled the air. Balloons hung deflated, confetti untouched. Sabrina's daughters arrived that afternoon, holding hands, their eyes swollen but determined. Jessica spoke softly to the small crowd that gathered outside the door, saying, "Mom worked her whole life for this. We're going to open these doors because that's what she wanted." And they did. Cameras flashed as the family snipped the ribbon their mother never got to touch. What was meant to be a celebration became a vigil. At the Douglas County Jail, Volanta Walker sat in silence. His hospital gown replaced by an orange jumpsuit, his right arm in a sling. During his arraignment, he didn't look up once. The prosecutor read the charges aloud: malice murder, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. He said nothing. When the judge asked if he understood, he simply nodded. The courtroom was filled with quiet sobs, mostly from Sabrina's family. Her youngest daughter whispered to a reporter afterward, "He took everything. And he doesn't even care." The GBI later released its findings: one gunshot wound to the chest, fired from close range. The bullet pierced her heart instantly. There was no second shot, no hesitation. The act had been deliberate, fueled by control and rage. Friends of the couple told detectives that Sabrina had confided in them weeks earlier that she was planning to leave, that she needed peace. That revelation made the tragedy even heavier. In the months that followed, Douglasville rallied around Sabrina's name. A mural was painted on the side of her shop, a portrait of her smiling, scissors in hand, the words, "Beauty never dies," written beneath. Her daughters turned her salon into a symbol of survival. But for them, justice would never feel like enough. The man who killed her may have faced prison, but the hole he left in their hearts was life without parole. Even in death, Sabrina Walker's presence refuses to fade. Her story continues to echo through Douglasville like a melody of pain and resilience. Every week, clients still stop by her barbershop, some just to sit in the chair where she once stood, others to tell her daughters how she changed their lives. They talk about her laugh, the way she'd tilt her head while listening, and how she could make even the most broken person feel whole again. But now, instead of scissors snipping and hair dryers humming, the shop carries a quieter rhythm: reflection, remembrance, and healing. In the months after her murder, her daughters became the voice she no longer had. They organized fundraisers against domestic violence, speaking at schools and churches, telling their mother's story as both a warning and a legacy. Jessica once said during a local interview, "She gave so much love, even to the person who didn't deserve it." If her story saves one woman from staying in a situation like that, then her life still means something. The world stopped seeing Sabrina as just a victim, they began seeing her as a teacher. But the pain lingers. Each October, on the anniversary of her death and her birthday, her family gathers outside groomsmen of Atlanta barbershop. They light candles, place flowers, and sing her favorite gospel song, "I Won't Complain." The lyrics, about faith in suffering, feel heavier now, but her daughters sing them anyway, believing their mother hears every note. As for Volanta Walker, his trial concluded with a guilty verdict for malice murder. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. He sat motionless as Sabrina's family read their victim impact statements. Jessica's words silenced the courtroom when she said, "You took her life, but you didn't take her light. We're living proof of that." Some say he blinked for the first time when she said it. Today, the mural of Sabrina still watches over Fairburn Road, a face of grace against the backdrop of grief. People stop to take photos, to leave flowers, or to whisper her name under their breath. Because though her life was stolen in one violent instant, her story didn't end on that driveway. It continues every time someone chooses to walk away from abuse, every time a woman decides her life is worth more than her fear. And for Sabrina Walker, that is the justice she deserved, the kind that speaks long after the gunfire has gone silent.
Sabrina Willis's daughters say their mother had planned a grand reopening of her hair salon for today. Now, despite what happened last night, they decided not to cancel the event. They say they want to keep her business running to honor their mother.
This was something she was really looking forward to. My mama put her blood, sweat, and tears into this business.
Friends and loyal customers coming out to show their support for the business and her daughters.
She was a loving person. She showed up for other people, so they're going to show up for her.
Though Sabrina is not here to see the moment she's been planning months for. Her daughters are making sure she's remembered not by how she died, but for her passion and impact in the community.
This really helped keep us going today because this was a tough day for us. So
yeah,
we appreciate it. This is what she would have wanted.